products for the legal profession. He led the company from founding through multiple rounds of venture funding and then to initial public offering and acquisition. And now he shares his expertise with the university. Duncan Smith will be our last speaker in this panel. He is the creator and founder of Novelist, a unique reader's advisory service to libraries and their patrons. EBSCO Publishing acquired Novelist in 1999, and Duncan currently serves as a vice president for the Novelist division. He is known nationally for his leadership in the field of reader's advisory, and as you'll see, he has published widely in this field and provides fine examples of how research can be translated into practice. So with that, I'd like to introduce Anne.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming back from lunch. We had a lottery yesterday to see who had the coveted right after lunch speaking slot, and I won. So thank you for rewarding that. This is, first of all, a privilege to be asked to do this and to think about trends that have brought us to this place and time and will take us, I think, into the future as well. This is part of a series of talks that I have done maybe for the last 3 years or so. And I'm going to start by using the same quote that Gary used, which I have also been using for a long time, but my edge is that I'm going to tell you who said it first, and that is Lewis Carroll. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. That is a quote that's handy for many purposes, talking to strategic planning groups, talking to your CEO when you are lobbying for an increase and so on. But it's also very pertinent for the time that we're going to spend together today. And I'm going to say several things that my 26-year-old son, who is my test subject for all of these matters, when I tell him, his response is often, duh, like say something that nobody ever thought of before. But I'm going to say several things that people have thought of before, but maybe not in this context. First of all, we live in a time of information and knowledge explosion. That is so cliched, it's almost impossible to think of that as a new idea. But when I started giving this talk in 2009, Facebook had 350 million members, which seemed like a very big number. How many members does Facebook have now? Anybody happen to know? It's about, yes, by August it will be in the multiple billions. That's a pretty big increase over a very short period of time. But I will tell you that in 2050, one thing I can predict with some confidence is that Facebook will be a small footnote in the history of social media. Something will have replaced it many, many, many times over between now and 2050. So things explode across our consciousness. We run to catch up. We try to understand how to use and implement them, and then we move on to something else. So I want to reflect in my 15 minutes of limelight here this afternoon on the 5 trends that I think have brought us where we are today, but will continue on to 2050, and then think from an industry perspective about the attributes and skill sets that we are looking for when we hire people. The first 2 and the third and fourth go together in clusters, and all of them add up to the 5th one. So we'll start with globalization. Thomas Friedman, in his World is Flat book, and many, many, many others have talked about this phenomenon. Barriers between people, governments, cultures, businesses, information, and obviously technology are erased. We live in a world that is very flat, and a world in which being good enough is not good enough. We live in a world that has to strive for excellence because we are not competing in national or regional or statewide or local arenas. We are competing in a global arena. This is true for companies like mine. I say mine proprietarily, but Rupert Murdoch and I are not linked together intimately, so it's actually not my company, but way down the food chain, it's mine, and that is 80% of our business comes from global companies, yet they make up less than 20% of our customer base. So what happens in Singapore, or what happens in Greece, or what happens in Spain, or what happens in other parts of the world intimately affects the way we do business. But this is true also for you. You may think that you compete with people in your own local area. Sills people graduate and populate this part of Carolina and other places, but in fact, you are competing with people who live around the world because of outsourcing, among other things. People who can do what you do, but much cheaper, are doing it. It's not a secret that companies like McKinsey and Bain and Deloitte and our big parts of our big customer base have work centers in India, increasingly in China, and even more increasingly now in Latin America. So you are competing in a global sense for traction in the workforce. Offshoring and outsourcing exacerbate this. So you're living in a time when we have a Thomas Friedman's flat world. We also live in a time, this is obviously a duh statement, that the global economy is moving through uncharted and distressed markets. I hear people on the subway in Washington, D.C. talking about what's happening in the European Union or whether the euro is going up or down. 10 years ago, they probably didn't know or care about that, but we care about that fairly intimately right now. Carnegie Endowment for International Peace says that we are in uncharted territory. World trade has declined by more in this last year than it has in the entire period after World War II. So, global housing bubble has collapsed, unstable membership in the EU and other places, global stock market declines. We are entering a period of distressing unemployment, or even more insidiously, I would argue, underemployment, where we see people with master's degrees or doctoral degrees competing for jobs that even people without degrees would have been happy to compete for in the past. This, in our world, means that we've accelerated library and information center closings. This has been true in some sectors for a while, the news sector, for example, but it has run rampant through the corporate sector. And I would say those of you in the academic, public, law, and other fields who think you may have been immune from this need to think again, because you are not immune from this. Outsourcing, as I mentioned earlier, of information work is commonplace. And this is true not only in our corner of information work, but whenever you call a help desk or a service line for any number of kinds of products or services that you purchase, chances are you are going to be speaking to somebody who is not looking out the same window you are looking out of. For people like Dow Jones, or people who are institutionalized vendors or creators of content, this means that we are on the lookout for niche competitors who are coming in to grab parts of our market that are lucrative, or low-cost competitors who do good enough work at far, far lower prices. And the measurement of this for ourselves, for our stockholders and our owners, as well as your measurement of this for your employers, becomes a return on investment roulette. How can you provide service, quantify and evaluate its value, and express that? Well, I would say that in our part of the world, we have probably not been very good at that. Disintermediation and the disruptive technologies point that I'll make next are also linked together. Disintermediation is a trend that is true in the B2C world, the business to consumer world, as well as the business to business world. Think about 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago. When you wanted to get money, you went to the bank. When I went to London every other week for some period of time, and I wanted to get money, I bought traveler's checks. Remember that quaint idea? None of that is true anymore. Money is readily available in a corner in Zimbabwe as easily as it is in a corner in Washington, D.C. Disintermediation means we've moved away from that personal transaction. My Petri dish son is a prime customer of Amazon. Daily, the UPS guy and I greet each other at the door with, "What do you suppose is in this package?" One day it was a lawnmower blade. The next day it was a pair of tweezers. Day after that it was a box of paper towels.